The last thing that we need to do with our chart is add a label to the X and Y axis. And as well, we'll add a label to the top of the chart that will show the information for the data that we're interacting with. Let's start with the Y axis. Head to the code, and within the draw axis function, at the end, I'll type the following. This.select, and we'll want to select the element that has both the classes Y and axis. To that, we'll append a text element, and we'll append the text rating, space, open parentheses, close parentheses, 1 equals low, comma, 5 equals high. Save that and refresh, and there it is on our Y-axis. Now what we need to do is we need to move it so it straddles the center, and it's rotated 90 degrees, so it goes from bottom to top, from the beginning of the word to the end. So what we'll do is before the text function, .attr, the attribute transform, we'll set translate, 0, 0, and we'll also set rotate, and in that order. That's really critical. When we translate it, we're going to move it from the top, so we'll open and close the string for the second 0, and that'll be the height of the chart divided by 2. We'll rotate it -90, so counterclockwise. Save that, refresh, and there it is. Now we need to straddle it on the middle, and we'll do that by setting the CSS. So let's set a style for this. .classed, and it'll be classed as Y, and it will be classed as an axis label. And don't forget the dash. Now go to main.css, and at the bottom, new line, .axis-label. Open and close the brackets, text-anchor, :middle. Save it, and there you go. Let's move it to the left some. Index.html. With the first 0, we'll delete it, open and close the string, and then we'll type -56. That looks pretty nice. Let's give the left margin more room. So let's go to the margin object, and for the left, set to 100. Now let's do the x-axis. Go back to the code, new line at the bottom of the draw axis where we just created the y-axis label, this.select. Select the element that has both the x and axis class. Append to that element text element. Set the text for that to customer age. Save it, refresh, there it is. Let's give that the class of x space axis label, so really 2 classes, x and axis label. Set that to true. What that will do is set the text anchor to the middle. Now we'll need to affect the transform, .attr, transform, and for the second argument, we'll want to do translate, open and close parentheses, 0, 0. And since we want to straddle the middle, get rid of the first 0, open and close the string, and then between the 2 strings, we're going to put width divided by 2. Save that, and now it's in the middle of the chart, and we'll push it down by affecting the second 0, open and close the string, plus 48 pixels. Save that, refresh, and it's looking pretty good. Now what we'll do is we'll create a label at the top of the chart. Every time we interact with one of these data points, that label will be updated. Go back to the code, and just after the creation of the x-axis, type this.append g. So we're appending a group element to our chart. Now we'll append to that group element a text element, and we'll set the text for that with some dummy text. Save that and go to the browser, and there we go. Let's go ahead and set a class so that we can easily access this later with the selector, .class, and we'll set it to chart-header, and set the second argument to true. Finally, we'll go ahead and set up an attribute of transform, though we might not necessarily use it. So transform and translate. All right, now it's time to affect this with an event listener. So we'll go down to the portion of the code which creates the data points, and that's here within the donuts for each function. And we're really interested in the update portion of this. Here at the end of the update portion, we're going to append a statement, .on with parentheses, first argument mouse over, and with a function that has d and I as the arguments, and open and close curly brackets. So essentially when we roll over the data point, we're interacting with it, we want to see information. And then also we need to handle when we roll out of it. So .on mouse out, function d, I, and there we go. Save that. We'll just mouse over it for now to make sure there's no errors, and make sure your developer console is open at the bottom. So far so good. Let's handle the mouse over first. So what we need to do is we need to put a string together based off of the data that is bound to the element that we're interacting with. So var str equals d.key plus open a string with a space, donut, and a colon, and then add a space. Now we're going to select that chart header and then add text. d3.select, and we'll select .chart header, and we'll set the text for that to be str. Save it and refresh. When we hover over, powdered, glazed, sprinkles, jelly. Okay, now we need to set it so that it goes away when we mouse out. In the mouse out, d3.select, select the chart header for the text. We'll just do an empty string. Save it, refresh, and you can see it disappears. So we don't need the hello world dummy text anymore, so let's get rid of that. We're going to take that and delete it so that it is an empty string. Refresh, and now it just appears and disappears. Now, one thing that you'll notice is that the name of the donut isn't capitalized, so let's go ahead and write some CSS to change that. Let's go to main.css. We'll type .chart-header, open and close brackets, text-transform, capitalize. Save that, and let's change the size so that way it's a little bit bigger, so 125%. Save and refresh. Now when we hover, you see that it's there, and the first letter has been capitalized, and that's thanks to this particular CSS style, text transform. When you set it to capitalize, it capitalizes the first letter of words. And we're going to complete the mouse over string. So go back down to where we created the mouse over, and that is here at line 163 within the gSelectAll response. The next thing we'll do is on a new line, str plus equals age, colon, space, plus d.age. What the plus equals operator does in JavaScript when you're working with strings is it continues to append onto a string. New line, str plus equals responses, colon, and then plus d.responses. Then str plus equals average rating, colon, plus d.value. Save that and refresh. Now as we hover, you see that we have our full string. Looks like we need a space between the age and responses. That's not a problem. So what we'll do here is at the end of age plus space, same with responses plus space, save and refresh, and that's looking pretty good. So now we have our chart complete with the axes labels. And as we hover, you can see that we're getting the individual values for the donuts. All we need to do now is push this text up a little bit because it's kind of crowding the space. So we'll head back up to where we created the chart header, and now we'll set the translate. And here, let's set it to -24 from the top. Let's see what happens there. And that looks a little better. And this is a pretty good looking chart. You can start to glean information about the data that was collected, such as here with the sprinkles donut. The younger the folks were, the higher they rated the donut, and as they got older, the lower they rated it. If we take a look at the jelly, it seems to have this similar kind of trend, whereas with the powdered donut, the older folks seem to like it more than the younger. This really displays the power of D3 and its ability to create these wonderful data visualizations that are rich and dynamic and allow the user to interact with them to really understand what the data is saying.